Hello everyone, so today's session is going to help you find your neutral pelvis and also reteaching your body how to find balance between the two sides. So we'll be focusing a lot between the left and the right and then the opposites, moving them together. To start off with, we'll be lying down onto our backs. Knees are going to be bent. And we'll just be focusing on pelvic tilts here. We will be tilting the pelvis forwards first, arching your lower spine, moving away from your neutral spine, and then just relax it back into what should be neutral for you. Let's do that with an inhalation. Tilt forwards, and exhale, release, back into what's neutral for you. Make sure that you move within a range that does not cause you any discomfort. Inhale forwards. And exhale back into your neutral. One last time. Inhale forwards. And exhale back into neutral. Good. We will now bring it in with a movement in the upper body. So interlace your fingers behind your head. We're going to inhale forwards, and then as we exhale, curl forwards into your ab curl, but pull your elbows in. And it's inhale, pelvis forwards into arch, relax and curl forwards, elbows pulling in. Let's do two more. Inhale, pelvis tilting forwards into an arch. Relax. Curl forwards. And head back down, elbows relaxed. Now we will introduce a leg movement to this whole sequence. We'll be reaching the left leg away. As we pull the toes in towards the shins, we tilt forwards. As we exhale, slide the heel back to your sit bone and then gently come into this forward curl. Slowly lower the upper body and the leg back down. Slide it out. Flex the ankle. Inhale, tilt forwards. Exhale, pull that heel into the sit bone. Curl the upper body forwards. Slowly lower down, lengthen the leg away from you. Let's do this one more time. Flex the ankle, inhale, pelvis tilting forwards. Relax the pelvis, slide the heel in and come into your forward curl. Now just watch what I'm doing next. I'm taking my leg out into an external rotation. Then I drop my leg down to the floor onto the outside edge of my foot. And then I slide my leg away. And then repeat that same sequence again. So let's do this together. So starting with your legs straight. Pull the heel in. Curl forwards. Take your leg out. Lower the foot down close to the sit bone. And then glide that leg away from you on the outside edge of the leg. And then relax with your upper body down and your legs stretched away from you. Inhale, tilt your pelvis forwards. Slide the heel in. Close to the sit bone, come into your curl. Take the leg into an external rotation, so knee pointing to the left. Drop that foot onto the outside edge, close to your butt. Slide it away as you lower the upper body. Let's do that again. So leg straight, ankle is flexed. Inhale, pelvis forwards. Glide the heel in as you relax the pelvis. Curl forwards. Go into your external rotation with that left leg. Drop down onto the outside edge of the foot. Slide that leg away from you as you lower the upper body. Okay, now watch the next one. I'm changing it slightly. So the start of the sequence is the same. You flex your ankle, you pull your heel in, and you come into your forward curl. Now I'm doing a slight internal rotation, trying to put my foot down onto the inside edge of the foot and then sliding it out in that motion. Lengthen out again, flex the ankle, inhale pelvis forwards, bring the heel in, come into your forward curl, and then take your leg into that internal rotation. Drop the foot down onto the inside edge of the foot, slide it away from you as you lower the upper body down. Inhale, tilt your pelvis forwards, relax the pelvis as you bring your heel in, curl forwards, take your leg into internal rotation, place the foot down on the inside edge and slide the leg away from you. Good. And let's bring it back to where we've started. We'll do the same on the right side. But just before we move on to the next, to the right side, just for a minute observe how it feels between your left hip and your right hip. Do you feel a warmness? Do you feel a little bit more energy? Just notice the changes and how your body is responding. Now let's reach the right leg away from us. First, it's just a centered leg position. Inhale, tilt the pelvis forwards. And then relax the pelvis, bring the heel in towards your sit bone and come into forward curl. Lower the leg nice and softly. Stretch it away from you again. Keep the foot flexed. Pelvis is tilting forwards. Relax the pelvis. Pull the heel in. Come into forward flexion. Lower the leg slowly, softly. Reach it away. Ankle is flexed. Pelvis is tilting forwards as you inhale. Slide the leg in towards your sit bones. Come into forward flexion. Good. Now change that leg positioning. Take the knee out to the right. Slight external rotation into the hip here. Lower the leg down onto the outside edge. And then slide it away from you as you lower the upper body. Back into a centered leg position. Pull the toes in towards the shins. Inhale pelvis forwards. And then relax the pelvis and pull the heel into the sit bone. Lift and curl. Go into an external rotation. Lower the foot down close to the butt. Onto the outside edge. Slide it away. Back into centered leg position. Pull the toes in towards the shins. One more time. Inhale, pelvis tilting forwards. Relax into your neutral. Pull the heel in. Curl forwards. Take the leg into external rotation one last time. Lower the outside edge of the foot down onto the floor. Slide it along the floor away from you. Back into centered position. We're going to go into the internal rotation position next. Pull the heel into the glute. Curl forwards. Now rotate that leg slightly so you can lower onto the inside edge of the foot. Slide it away and back into centered foot position. Inhale, tilt the pelvis forwards. Bring the heel in, curl. Internal rotation. Lower onto the inside edge. Slide away on the inside edge as far as you can go. Back into centered leg position. Inhale, tilt forwards. And relax, pull the heel towards the glute. Curl forwards. Internal rotation position. Lower onto the inside edge. Stretch it away. And back into centered position. Well done. Take your hands back to the sides of the waist. Bring your knees back in to bend position. Let's just tilt forwards again. And then relax back into your neutral. Nice deep breath here. Just to notice how your body is feeling after that movement. We're sliding away and pulling it back into a curl. Now I want you to tilt forwards onto the left sit bone. So it's a slight imbalanced movement here. We're going to do it on the left and then on the right. So tilt forwards but move towards the left sit bone. And then relax. Into neutral. Now tilt forwards towards the right sit bone. And then relax. Into your neutral. Tilt forwards towards your left sit bone as you inhale. Tilt forwards to the right. One more time to the left. And last one to the right. Good. And then just do one centered tilting forwards, not to the left, not to the right, but staying right into the centered position. And then relax. Fantastic. Let's roll onto our left sides next. You're going to use your hand here to support the head and bring your legs into a 90-degree angle. You can use your top arm, your right arm in my case, just to place it here on the outside of the hip, because we're going to focus on a side flexion. So side flexion normally means that your hip and your rib cage is pulling together. And then you can go back into what's neutral to your hips when one hip is stacked on top of the other hip bone. Or you can put it down a little bit when it gets more into a side stretch. Good. Okay, so let's hike that hip up to feel that shortening between the hip and the rib. You can even use your hands there to feel that movement. And then just relax it back into neutral. No pulling down. Just pull up with the hip, hiking up with the hip, and then relax into what's neutral. So we'll bring this in with an internal rotation with your hips. So we're going to do an internal rotation by just lifting the foot up. So we can feel how this is closing that gap between the rib and the hip. And then relax the leg back down and it takes it back into a neutral. And let's lift it back up. And it takes it back into a neutral position. And we can lift it back up. And back into a neutral. Good. So let's take this into a bit of a stronger movement. So you're going to take your top hand, reach it over, but making sure that the inside of your arm is just touching the side of your face. Now, as we lift the leg up, we're going to also lift the upper body up, reach the leg alongside the body, but just behind your hips. And you can feel a little bit of a stronger activation here of your oblique muscles. Lower the leg and reach the arm over again. So this is going to help you stretch out. And lift the leg, lift the upper body, working nice and slow here, thinking about closing the gap between the hip and the rib, and then reach it over into a little bit of a stretch. And let's do that again 2 more times. Lift the leg, reach the arm behind the hip, and then reach over for a little bit of a lengthening out, and exhale. And inhale. Good, so that's a very gentle way of teaching yourself really good movement pattern around side flexion. Now lift yourself up into a side seated position, or also a mermaid stretch position. Take both of your hands onto the floor on the left hand side here. Your right hand is just going to touch the shoulder on the left. Your elbow is going to be at the same height as your shoulder as well. So from here we're going to go into a rotation. Take that elbow, point over to the right. And you'll feel that your right sit bone is moving down towards the floor. Now take your elbow, point it over towards the left. And your right sit bone is pulling away from the floor. Exhale. And inhale. And exhale, over to the right. And inhale. And exhale, over to the right. And inhale. We're going to change it slightly. So as your elbow is moving over to the right, look towards your left. As your elbow is moving towards the left, look towards your right. Elbow towards the right, look towards the left. Elbow towards the left, look towards the right. Elbow to the right, look left. Elbow to the left, look right. And then come into a centered position. Okay, now take your right hand, wrap it around the head, and then just gently give yourself a little stretch there on the left side of your neck. Your fingers are going to be reaching away from you, and this is going to help increase that stretch on the left hand side. Keep the fingers in contact with the floor, but lift up really tall through the spine here. So trying to sort of sink into it. Really get that pelvis in a neutral position. Feel yourself planting down into your sit bones. You can even think about pressing the knees down into the floor as well. Really good stretch out for the hips here. Good. Now what we're going to do here is I'm going to try and pull my elbow further down towards the right. This is going to drag my fingers towards my hips on the left. And then staying tall, I'm going to reach that left arm up. So now I'm going to get more of a stretch on the left side of my body as my right elbow is pointing down towards the floor. Take my fingers back down, so this is going to pull me up a little bit. And then I walk my fingers away from me, go onto a bent elbow, and then reach my right elbow up to the ceiling this time. Now I'm stretching out and I'm increasing that gap between my lower rib and my hip. Get back up tall. Take my elbow down towards the right. Keep my fingers in contact with the mat to increase that stretch in the neck on the left. Sitting tall. And then reach the arm up as I'm lowering my elbow further towards the right. Take the fingers down to the floor. Feel a stretch on the left side of the neck. And then walk the fingers away onto your elbow, and right elbow is now pointing up to the ceiling, feeling that stretch. You can even take that right hip and press it towards the floor on the right to increase that stretch and that gap between your lower rib and your hip. And come back up into center. Good, let's do it one more time. Keep the fingers in contact with the mat on the left. Reach the right elbow down. And then take the left arm up and lower the right elbow towards the floor on the right. Sitting tall, lifting away from the floor, from your sit bones all the way up, even though this is lateral flexion. Lower the fingers. And then bring yourself back up into centered position. Good, let's do that whole sequence on the other side. Come onto your right side this time. Knees and hips in a 90-degree angle. Support your head with your arm. Okay, and we are just going to focus on that movement in the hip, the top hip. So that top hip can hike up and it closes the gap between the lower rib and the hip. And you can pull it down to increase that gap. This is your side flexion. You can hike it up, closing the gap, shortening those muscles, the oblique muscles, and then release it slightly. Back into a neutral position this time. So that's when your top hip is in line with your bottom hip. We are going to lift the leg, the foot, take the leg into internal rotation, and this is going to bring you into side flexion as well. That gap between your hip and your rib is closing. Lower the leg and the hip goes back to neutral. And exhale, lift it up. And inhale, release it. And exhale, lift it up. And inhale, release it. Only lift it as high as you feel comfortable. One more. Exhale, lift it up. Inhale, release it. Let's make that a little bit stronger. Top hand is going to reach over. The inside of your arm is just touching the side of your face, creating a lovely stretch here for the shoulder and the back. Now, as we lift the leg, we also lift the upper body, reach the arm alongside the waist, behind the hips, feeling that gap closing up between the lower rib and the hip, and inhale. And let's do 3 together. Exhale. And inhale. And exhale. And inhale. And exhale. And inhale. Good. From here, push yourself up into your side seated position. This time your knees are pointing to the right and both of your hands are going to start on the mat on the right hand side of the body. Take your left hand, rest it on the shoulder, have your left elbow up. And we're going to start with some rotations here. Move your left elbow towards the left. Feel how your left sit bone lowers down to the floor. And then move the elbow all the way over to the right. Feel how your left sit bone moves away from the floor. Let's do that again. Exhale to the left. Inhale to the right. And exhale to the left. Inhale to the right. Nice and slow here. Exhale to the left. Stay tall. Inhale to the right. Now as you take your elbow to the left, keep on looking right. As you take your elbow to the right, look left. And elbow to the left, look right. Elbow to the right, look left. Elbow to the left, look right. Elbow to the right, look left. And then come back into a centered position. Good. So we are going to take our arm on the left, wrap it around the head, and then just try and stretch over towards the left as much as you can while keeping your fingertips in contact with the mat. You'll find that having this contact with the mat, stretch out arm on the right helps you stretch out a little bit more in the neck on the right. Now lift that arm up and then lower your left elbow down to the floor on the left a little bit more. And feel much more of a stretch on the right side of the body. Bring the fingertips down. This will lengthen you up back into a more centered position. Walk the fingers away. Lower down onto that elbow on the right. But this time your left elbow is pointing up to the ceiling. And that's going to open up that area between your lower rib and your hip on the left. Now come back up again. Keep your fingers in contact with the mat for the start of this side flexion to the left. Feel that neck stretch. Feel that lift from the sit bones all the way up to the ceiling. You can try and get your knees down to the floor as much as you can here. And then lift that right arm, lower the left elbow down to the floor. Work gently, just go into the range where you feel you have control and there's no discomfort. We don't want pain. Lower the fingers. Walk the fingers away and lower down on that elbow on the right, but lift the left elbow up to the ceiling. Exhale up. And then lower the left elbow down as much as you can, keeping the fingertips in contact with the floor on the right. Then lift it up, lower that left elbow down a little bit more. Stay lifted from your sit bones all the way up to the ceiling. Lower the fingertips. Walk it out onto that bent elbow position and then reach the elbow up. Feeling that gap between the lower rib and the hip. Good. And then come back up. From the seated position, just swivel around with the feet again to the other side. And we'll just do one last movement in rotation. Take your right hand, wrap it around the rib cage on the left, or get it around you as much as you can. This is there to assist the rib cage rotating to the right. And then release it back into centered. So it's that focus, how I always say in our classes, is thinking about your nipples being headlights. So that we don't think just moving the shoulders is rotating the spine, but it's actually the movement in the rib cage we're focusing on. So the hand is there just to guide it a little bit. So guide, rotate to the left. Release. And guide, rotate to the left. Release. Now look to the left and rotate to the right. Look to the left and rotate to the right. And look to the left and rotate to the right. Stay rotated to the right with your rib cage. Now move your head positioning and look all the way over to the right shoulder and see how much more rotation you can get in your rib cage when you also move your neck and your head in that same direction. Great. Let's change around with our foot positioning. Feet on the left, sitting nice and tall. Take your left hand, wrap it around the rib cage, and we're going to try and rotate the ribs towards the left. You'll find that there's not much of a movement there. Some of you might just have to visualize this one if there's no movement. Rotate as you exhale. Rotate as you exhale. Now look over to the right as you exhale and rotate to the left. Look over to the right as you rotate to the left with your rib cage. Relax that shoulder. In fact, you can rest it on that knee so that you're not tempted to push into the floor. And again, look right, rotate to the left. Now look over to the left and feel a little bit more movement there, rotating to the left. Well done. Okay, now come back up into standing and then just find that balance over both of your feet. Hopefully having done some of these movements in rotations has made your body feel much more of a having much more of a sensation of connection as well between the two sides. We're going to inhale up, make ourselves nice and tall, and exhale, swing it out. Inhale up,